My fearless friends, I am too excited to even have a proper introduction for my amazing guest today, and it's Matt LeBris. And I'm pretty sure that you have seen my posts on Instagram and everywhere on social media around decoding success. And I have to be really honest with you, and I have to be vulnerable that this is the first time that it has actually happened that I had to pause my introduction in 2.5 years of podcasting. This is how excited I am about this amazing podcaster and content creator that has taught me a great, valuable lesson on kindness more than anything. And since yesterday, since I saw one of his posts on Twitter about the amazing philanthropy work that he has been doing with building miniature libraries for his community, feeding the frontline workers. And he has been through so much that it got me so emotional. And I barely can shake the emotion even now. It's amazing how life just throws at you many things, but you kind of get your inner fuel, you get your pain to work for you. And this is something that I cannot wait to ask Matt about, because let's face it, most of us, when we're in pain, and when I'm in pain as well, I'm stuck. I cannot do too much. And it's happening even now, and I'm truly excited, too excited. When I'm in the peak of my emotions, I can barely move and do things, but somehow Matt has more than moved. He has used pain to fuel his desires, to give so much meaning to his life. And this was my personal experience with Matt. I have a short introduction for you guys, but I'm pretty sure you're going to check his biography in the description of the video on Spotify. So I want to tell you some really cool things about Matt, since I'm following him on social media, and maybe you will not see these things unless I tell you. So Matt loves pizza. He has the gorgeous dog ever, because even when we had our first chat, as I was scrolling through his Instagram, Draco just caught my eye. And I even told him, well, you had Mel Robbins there, and then there's Draco, so I had to check Draco first. It's amazing how caring he is. And I was just telling him before we started, wow, what a nurturing nature. And I think that only someone that has been through quite a bit can develop. And you know, Matt, before diving into personal development and questions around you and your success and mindset, I just read the coolest thing about you, which is that you have a sandwich named with your name in New York. Can you please tell us a bit about that story? Because I think it's so cool.
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. I'm really, really excited for this. Very grateful for it. So I wanted that to be the first thing that I share. But yeah, I have a sandwich named after me. Two, in fact. It's at a place called Anthony and Son Panini Shop, which has an incredible story. It's founded by a gentleman that is born and raised in Italy. He came to this country, the United States, and landed in New York. And a truly incredible story. He worked on the same corner in which he now owns. So, keep that in mind. He literally started working there and eventually bought the building, bought the business, started his own business. And one of his children, his son, Sabino, is one of my best friends. So many moons ago, many years ago, he decided to start naming sandwiches after the people in his life. And one of the people that he chose was myself and one of our other friends named Steve. So the sandwich is called the Matt and Steve. The second one is called the Matt and Steve 2.0. It is not a healthy sandwich. It is something that will most definitely put you in a food coma, to say the least, and you would definitely need a nap after. But they are absolutely incredible at what they do. The way that they've develop this business and the way that Anthony has been allowing his children to revolutionize the business and bringing it into the, the current century that we're in is so fantastic to see. But the backstory is exactly that. It was a marketing tactic that has definitely been fruitful for them.
Wow, I've never heard of anything like this, and it's so cool. What an experience. And now you just gave me some new goals. I'm thinking of maybe doing this with a coffee that has my name because I'm such a coffee lover. So thank you for sharing this. And as I was telling you earlier, now that I'm kind of getting back in my composure, I'm so privileged, Matt, and so honored to have you here with us because the more I read about you, the more fascinated I was and the more curious I was to just, oh my God, because some people just go through one thing and they stay on the ground their whole life.
Mm.
But you went through several things and I know that you're still dealing with, I mean, we all are, but how you manage to get up and just completely change the direction of your life is unbelievable. So can you please share with us a bit about your story? How did you get to be so present and so fully aware in your life?
Well, the awareness and the presence didn't necessarily come until a few years ago. I definitely experienced big and little T traumas where, you know, just life, whether it be parents getting divorced, not getting accepted into any high schools, getting kicked out of 2 high schools, watching my mother battle cancer, losing my dream of playing professional sports after an injury, getting arrested, failing out of college before going back to graduate, like blowing my life savings trying to maintain a certain image so that people would think I'm a certain type of person. I mean, through all of that, at the end of the day, um, I say this transparently, I didn't necessarily have the awareness at those moments. I mean, I was very, very numb to everything that was taking place in my life. I didn't feel, I felt nothing. I just kept going from one thing to the next. And eventually, what that led to was I mean, the best way to frame it is, getting hit in the face with like a 2x4 or a baseball bat or, you know, something like it hurt. Life just blew up in front of my face until it forced me to turn inward. And I would say probably in about 2020, I think it was June of 2020 to be exact, that is exactly when the presence and the awareness started to come about. And funny enough, I always thought I was a very self aware person. I was very self aware on the surface. Now I can come to you and say that I have transcended depths of who I am as I turn inward and try to make it to the core of who I am. So it was in 2020 when things really started to shift, but ultimately for years, and it sucked, but I wouldn't change it for anything because it ultimately got me to where I am today. I was numb. I was going from, one life event to the next, one life event to the next, never processed emotions, never felt the emotions, never did anything with the emotions outside of push them down because I was never taught how to self-soothe. I was never taught how to feel, how to process, or anything of that nature. In fact, I was taught the opposite. I was taught to not cry. I was taught to, and this is not just from my parents, this is from society. This is from a lot, definitely friends a lot. So, yeah, I was numb, but the self-awareness definitely started to come about a few years ago, and it's a beautiful transition without a doubt.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. The more I listen to you talk about your story, the more I realize that, hey, I'm doing this comparison without necessarily wanting to. It's just my mind just running to places and just saying, wow, I had it pretty easy. But yeah, I'm still struggling. I'm still learning along the way. But I see that you just had, as I feel it, a lot of endurance to pain. I mean, you just went from one big thing that just shook you emotionally to another. And do you remember what was the turning point? What happened? Was it Gary Vee mentioning legacy over currency? Was that the turning point?
That was definitely one of them. I think we all have moments where we start to shift our life, and I appreciate the research that you've done to know that those three words definitely have impacted me. But yeah, I think in short, that was definitely one of them. I think the biggest one was putting myself in therapy. I didn't, years ago, years upon years ago, when my parents were getting divorced, I was so young. I was probably not even a teenager at the time. Yeah, I definitely wasn't a teenager, and I was in therapy at such a young age, but it was because that was what was ordered by the court. Um,
Wow.
this was different. This was me wanting to go into therapy because I had realized I was in a relationship at the time and I wasn't being treated right. And I was allowing that, right? It's not me casting blame. Like, I hold myself 100% accountable without a doubt. And on that note, as I started to explore in therapy, the more I started to realize about myself, what I've allowed to transpire in my life, patterns, habits, all things that didn't serve me. That was the biggest turning point and still is the biggest turning point till this day. But like I said, we all have numerous turning points, and I think it's important to acknowledge them because without the first turning point, we most likely wouldn't get to the next. Like, we need one to at least start putting us on the trajectory, and they're bound to happen, right? We all have divine plan. So in due time, we'll start to see where those turning points are in our life, and it's important to reflect on them.
Wow. Yes. I just cannot believe that, as I'm listening to you, it's like I get some awareness on my own journey because I remember being kind of maybe around your age, maybe when my parents were talking about divorce. And to be honest, Matt, they were only talking about it. I kind of understood what was going on. They didn't divorce eventually, but when they mentioned the word divorce, I felt like I died
Mm.
right then and there, spiritually, completely. And I kind of began this process of numbing myself, which I'm still going through after so many years now. So I can only imagine what you went through with the court and everything, and the neglect that comes, unfortunately, as like a side effect of everything. And you have some amazing achievements. You're super young. I'm young too, anyway. But it's amazing how you got to be nominated Forbes 30 under 30. You have worked with Damon John, which is an amazing achievement. Damon John of Shark Tank, I think everyone knows him. You have this unbelievable top 1% globally ranked podcast, Decoding Success, which has been featuring Mel Robbins, Grant Cardone, and so many amazing people. And I have to say that I'm a huge fan of your work. And I wanted to ask you, Matt, so you have all this, you are still going to therapy, and I think that it's something that we all should do. And are you a believer in balance? Is this something that you kind of strive to achieve? Or is this maybe a unicorn, something that we use like a generic term like success or happiness? How do you see balance
Balance in what exactly?
in life, in everything that you do, in business, in all of Matt's world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't strive for balance, and the reason I share this is because what I do daily is what I want to do the rest of my life. So when it comes to my podcast, when it comes to conversations like this, when it comes to just making an impact in general, whether that be through philanthropy, whether it be through, a conversation, whatever it is, right? I mean, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So if I had 100 of these calls today, I would be thrilled with that. Obviously it would be impossible. There's not enough time in the day to do that, but um yeah, I don't necessarily even think about balance. Do in other areas of life I might, when it comes to getting rest and going to the gym, or, eating some pizza and making sure that I'm eating, in a way that my body receives the fuel it needs, right? So in other ways I might, but ultimately I think it's important, and we have to figure this out for ourselves, like what is I'll use the word balance for you, right? In regards to the work that you do, the time that you take off of work, what is, the balance for you when it comes to eating pizza or whatever snack you might like versus, eating food that fuels you. I think if I were to talk about the word balance and what that actually means, it's very individualized, and we're all so different, we're all so unique, and that's on purpose. And it's important for us to really find out what these things mean for us. So, like you said, the word success, the word happiness, like what do those words mean for you? For me, I don't even think of balance. I just I live. So, but for the people that are tuned into this, I think it's important to really dive deep and turn inward to realize, like, what is that quote unquote balance for you?
Love it. And maybe can you share with us what have you maybe seen success to be to these wonderful celebrities that you have had on your podcast? Do you think there's a common feature that they all would use to call themselves successful? Or is it, as you just said, as with balance, completely different for everyone?
I think there's a commonality in regards to how people do define success. I don't necessarily think it's how they define it that's common. I think how they get to define it is common. And how they get to define success really stems from their own personal development. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was really programmed to believe that success was highly aligned with money. Money is a fantastic tool. We all need it to survive. That is without a doubt. I love money. I hope everyone listening to this loves money. It's very important for us. But on that note, success doesn't necessarily, for me at this point, align with money. So at that time, I was very much so aligned with what I had, which made me feel successful. And that was okay. It made me strive for more. It definitely worked. So it's wasn't an issue. Like, it was 100% working, which was incredible to see, but it didn't serve my higher self. That was actually my lower self trying to compensate for the things that I didn't necessarily feel like I had growing up, which was attention because I felt neglected or rejected or this, that, and the other. So that was how I defined success then. And this is where it's common in regards to how the people that I have on my show define it. Like, we grow up, we grow, period. Up, down, sideways, this way, it doesn't even matter. Plants grow in every which direction. We're just like them. So how I started to develop really shifted how I viewed success. And one thing that I've actually been emphasizing right now in this moment is the importance of not defining success for a season of your life. Like, it's okay to be in those in between moments. We don't have to jump from a definition of success to another definition of success. We could say, okay, I no longer associate with money being the sole driver of what I think success is. You don't have to go from defining money that way to like some spiritual woo woo version of success. You could be in the middle and be like, you know what? I don't know what it is for me right now, but I know what it's not. And that's important too. So ultimately, the commonality, I would say, is more so the growth that my guests on the show have had, which led them to how they're currently defining it. Because without the growth, they would just still define success any which way they wanted to or previously had. But it's the growth that really transforms how they define it and what they strive for there then after.
Wow, love this. And I'm just enjoying so much what you said previously. You just live, and that's enough. This is just so fulfilling to hear because as I told you earlier, I'm such a content consumer. I'm really curious. And this is what I did with you. I kind of listened to your recent guest appearances on different podcasts, and I felt the need to just take notes because it helps with my own journey. It helps me heal and process certain things. So I know that one of your goals is to keep being a curious person.
Mm.
What is a field that you are mostly interested these days in reading? What are you working on in this very moment?
I haven't necessarily dove into it, and that's actually a lie. Let me backtrack. The answer is psychology. The reason I love psychology so much is because of being in therapy. Now, I jokingly say this with people all the time. When having conversations, I oftentimes feel like I am a therapist to an extent because of my experience in therapy, which obviously isn't true based off of educational standards. So I'm merely joking when I say that. But truth be told, what I've learned in therapy about myself does lead me to supplement what other people experience in their life. So psychology has me so won over for so many different reasons. Although I haven't necessarily dove into it from like an educational perspective outside of like, general leisure, which has been very nice, by the way. I mean, I've read some truly incredible books. Whether it be on the inner child, one of my favorite books is called Homecoming by John Bradshaw, How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. There's many, many books that I genuinely love. I would say psychology, and that's essentially where my show has shifted. It's shifted more into a psychology based show because success and psychology are very much so aligned. I just had a conversation the other day, and it was with a doctor who works with a professional sport team here in America in the National Football Association. Actually, National Football League, NFL would be the proper way to announce that. And he told me that the inner child impacts the play of players more than we can imagine. And I said, that's so crazy how
Mm,
psychology impacts success on the field or on the turf or on the court
mm.
or in the boardroom or on a podcast or on this or that. So it has me wildly curious. And I like to have these conversations to see where everything connects in this world. Spirituality connects to psychology, our success connects to psychology, our relationships connect to psychology. I think psychology is really one of the hubs of life, and it really helps us understand who we are. So I have immense curiosity on that topic.
This is an awesome topic. I'm also pretty interested in how the brain works.
Mhm.
Kind of the same thing because it's why we do the things that we do. We just you have all the manual instructions there. And I wanted to ask you, Matt, is there a certain book that you would recommend for our listeners, something that you're truly enjoying so much?
On what particular topic? Any?
Any?
I would say, I mean, whenever I'm asked, and I'm going to give it away here, I usually say this at the end of any interview, but there was a book and it was simply one thing. I mean, I'll say my favorite book is The Alchemist, but that's not the book I'm going to recommend. The reason being is because there is a book by a gentleman named John Gordon. He has written many books, so if you just type in his name, you'll see many. The book that I'm specifically referring to is called The Energy Bus. And this book is so easy to read. It's merely a story. And you want to know what happens in the next chapter. It's hard to put down. I haven't read it in quite a few years, but there was something within that book that stood out to me, and it's almost like it's tattooed on my heart, per se. It's an equation, and that equation is E plus P equals O. And what that stands for is events plus perspective equals the outcome. There's no numbers involved. I suck at math, so I promise I'm not doing any math here, but events plus perspective equals the outcome. And what that stands for is exactly that. The events that take place in our life are not always controllable. I would ideally like to control every event, but life would be rather boring that way, and it just doesn't work that way. So, on that note, in that equation, we can't count on controlling the event. What we can control is the way that we perceive the event. And the way we perceive the event is what's truly going to determine the outcome. Now, I will say, if you're going through a breakup right now, or you're going through a really hard time, if you just lost a business deal or didn't close a business deal, or you're living in fear or whatever, I'm not here to say that in this exact moment to be happy go lucky and just be like, yeah, like I'm going through a breakup. This is great. Like, I'm not that type of person. What I will say though is 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, 60 years down the road, when you look back at that event and you have moved on from it, how do you perceive that event? Because then it will determine the outcome. This directly ties into everything we talked about at the beginning of this episode. When I look back at my parents getting divorced, when I look back, let's use that example. I was so young, but I have now come to the understanding. By the way, I hated it when it was happening. I might not have voiced it, but my mother started to date right away. My parents were moving into different houses. I was split between, the house that I grew up in which had all my childhood friends versus moving into a neighborhood I never lived in before. Like, I hated it. It was cool because I had numerous video game systems. Like, I had the same video games at my dad's house and my mom. I had two of everything. So that part was cool. But now, many years down the road, I can't even tell you how many years since that's happened. When I look back, I say to myself, my soul gave me the exact thing I needed. I needed my parents. They tried their best. They didn't necessarily give me everything I needed in regards to emotions or time or attention or this, that, the other, but my soul gave me everything I needed. Now I have that perception, which is exactly why I share that equation. Again, that's from John Gordon. I did not come up with this. It's from John Gordon in his book, The Energy Bus. It's a super easy read. I really enjoy it. I always recommend it. And there's so much more to take away from that book, but whenever anyone asks me about a book, that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm just answering from my heart.
Thank you for mentioning this. I'm going to look this up. You really made me so curious to check out John's books. And you said something that's hard to let go. I want to recommend something to you and to our listeners. Maybe it kind of clicks with you, who knows? It is Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. I don't know if
Yes,
you've
I've read
heard.
it.
Have you read it? Okay. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Please tell me, what did you think of it?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I was a fan. The particular copy I had of the book, so I love his book Think and Grow Rich. The particular copy that I had of Outwitting the Devil was the original work, but it included a narration. I believe, I'm not 100% sure. I think
Hmm.
this is what I'm talking about. And I felt like the narration was opinionated, and I didn't necessarily agree with the opinion of what was being shared. So I think that turned me off slightly. I mean, the material was fantastic. It is a book that I finished. This was a couple years ago. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that's a good book for people to pick up and form their own opinion of it, right? I think that's an important thing, right? Like, you mentioned a book, and whether it aligns with me in the season of life in which I read it, because that's another thing, right? Like, we could read books in different seasons. I've picked up books before and I'm like, oh, this book is great. And then I've picked it up, or the opposite. I've picked up a book and I'm like, oh, I can't read this right now. But 5 years down the road, I read it. I'm like, wow, why couldn't I read it back then? Like, we grow, we shift. So that's something to acknowledge. Like, we have to form our own opinions.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for mentioning that. And yeah, I'm smiling now because I'm such a raving fan of that book. And that book, Matt, got me to start my pursuit into understanding fear. What's happening with this
Mm,
emotion? It was the turning point in my life when I said, okay, it's not that bad. I
yeah.
was just suffering panic attacks and severe anxiety. And when I read the book, okay, well, it's not that awful. I mean, I can kind of start and look at fear in a different direction. So, yeah, thank you for sharing your opinion on this. It's really,
Absolutely.
it's amazing. And I was really curious to see how you deal with mistakes nowadays because you're in business. Entrepreneurship is interesting. Most of the times
Yeah.
you kind of get all sorts of events happening, and as you said, we cannot control everything, and we don't want to anyway. It would be boring, right? As you said, how do you get the lessons from failures, from your mistakes? Is there something in particular that you do maybe on a daily basis?
I definitely don't get the lesson the first time around many times. I'll tell you that. And I say that transparently. I think in life, the lesson will continue to pop up. And the next level you get to, a new devil's going to appear and you're going to be tempted. Temptation's going to look you right in the eye. And it really comes down to our discipline and how we approach growth to help you, continuously level up. For me, when I make mistakes, I'm going to be honest, there are times I carry guilt where I say to myself, I chose to make this mistake. But here's the thing, this was actually said by, I believe her name is Andrea Owen. She was on my podcast. She's so fantastic. She says, Matt, if we could do better, we would do better. Like if we could choose to do better, we would do better. Right. So she gave the example like if a baby is crawling, you can't be mad at the baby for not walking because the baby doesn't know how to walk yet. Like we just don't know how to make the better choice yet. And maybe we do, and we're choosing to make the wrong choice, but that means there's something there that's continuously telling us to make that choice. That could be the desire for comfort. I mean, when yesterday, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a very, very long day, a hectic day, and I knew the right choice was not to eat Reese's peanut butter cups, but I chose to eat Reese's peanut butter cups. Like that was a conscious decision that I made, but I knew that it wasn't the right, like that was a mistake. It was a mistake because the more sugar I have, especially towards the end of the day, impacts the way that I sleep. It impacts the way that I dream, right? So ultimately, what I'm getting at is it takes me some time to learn the lessons, but those lessons are going to keep popping up until you finally learn them. If we could try to learn them faster, we're setting ourselves up for a faster trajectory to where we want to be in life. Furthermore, I don't think we could strive for perfection all the time, and I do think we need to give ourselves some ease. We need to allow ourselves to make these mistakes. I'm not telling you to choose the mistake, but I'm saying, listen, if it happens, you have to consult yourself, right? Just like you would consult someone else. I think it's important to operate in a sense as if we are treating people, I'm sorry, treating ourselves the way we would treat our friends.
Wow.
We don't do that often. But that is exactly the way that I'm trying to operate. And when mistakes happen, I consult myself. I'm aware of it to the point where I could talk to you about it right here on the podcast. I know that Reese's wasn't meant to be eaten last night, but it sure was. So, we gotta learn from it.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being so transparent and open. And Matt, if I may say, it's never a mistake to eat something that delicious.
Oh
I
no, it
love
is.
food. I have to say that I eat so much. I eat more than my dad. But I have to be thankful to God that I have an out of this world metabolism. I don't know where I came from, but I'm not human because I just eat so much. And it's just, accepting, okay, I'm enjoying this. It's great. It makes me happy, even if it's for 5 seconds and then I'm feeling like I'm going to faint, but just enjoy it. Because
Mhm.
next time, maybe in a week or two when you have the same thing, maybe to have less. Maybe the next time you'll have less and less. And I think you just need to be patient with yourself and just enjoy life because I think it's kind of maybe one of your life's philosophies to live. You just live and that's it. So just enjoy it. Enjoy those great
Yeah, but
treats.
they need to be had in moderation for me, when and I think this is so when I said live earlier in this episode, it doesn't mean that I'm, like free flowing through life where I don't care where I land, right? I mean, it's important to live in alignment with who you want to become. So for me, I know Reese's are damn good. Like that is my favorite candy. In fact, I actually have 2 half-pound cups of Reese's right here. These
Wow.
are, see how big this package is? These are absolutely massive. I got this
Wow.
for
Well,
Christmas.
you can send some over if you don't feel like finishing it.
No, no, no. These are too good. I never give away Reese's, but I know in moderation, why not have a Reese's? But it depends on the situation. I think life is very situational. and we're negotiating with ourselves all the time. Sometimes we negotiate when we cross the street, we negotiate when we turn lanes on the highway, we negotiate, when we have these conversations, we negotiate when we take our dogs for walks, we negotiate when we're going to eat lunch. My stomach just rumbled. So like all of these things we're negotiating, and it's important to be a good negotiator with yourself.
And I was just challenging you. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to see how you react if someone just challenges your opinion. Just not have that, normal, usual podcast when I just ask you all the cute, nice things. Why not challenge you for a bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all for it.
Love it. I just love the openness. And I know we only have a few more minutes left. And I have many things to ask you. I think you're amazing. Your work is phenomenal. Matt, I'm literally raving to everyone about you because, again, I was crying for a full hour with you guys, and to our fearless friends watching us and listening to this episode. You need to check Decoding Success. Check Matt's latest episode from last Wednesday. When was that? It was on the 4th. Yes. That 4th of April got me glued to my phone on Spotify for an hour. And what Matt did, and again, I'm such a huge content consumer and I love podcasts. Matt's podcast just got to be my number one, my most favorite one of them all, because creating a safe space for 3 gentlemen that you call your brothers is something that I've never seen in my life. The way you guys opened up and shared your emotions and your feelings, and you talked about friendship and intuition and brotherhood, which, wow, what's going on here? We need this. This is a role model in the making. So you guys need to check this amazing podcast. And again, check the episode on the 4th of April. Do not take my word for it. Please have a listen. Then let me know, or let Matt know, what do you guys think about this. So the last question, and again, oh my God, it's tough to choose. I even wrote it on my unicorn here. A lot to ask you because I am just so fascinated, Matt. This is such an honor to me. I'm choosing the question about if your 40-year-old self, Matt, 40 years old, would give you an advice right now, what would that advice be?
Trust the process. As simple
Oh,
as
I
that.
love it.
It's funny enough, the other day, I just got the chills saying that. A hair on my arm is standing
Wow.
up. The other day, I said to myself, as a creator, as someone that's quote unquote trying to make it, someone that's trying to bring about change and, bring his dreams to fruition, sometimes you question it, right? I'm a human being, right? And the other day was one of those days, and I was standing right here at my desk doing work, and I was having dialogue with myself. And I said, Matt, what's the move? I asked myself that question. I said, Matt, what is the move? Like, what are you supposed to be doing? And my voice, my intuition, replied back to me very clearly. It said, stay the course.
Wow.
Simply stay the course. And I asked it again. I was like, all right, let me double check. I'm a stubborn guy. Like, let me make sure I heard that correctly. And the same reply came about, stay the course. And I said to myself, you know what? I have to stay the course no matter what. Like, I have to stay the course. It's not easy at times. I could be making a shit ton more money doing something else. I could be literally doing anything else, but I'm doing this. And there's a reason I'm doing this. I know why I'm doing this. And the 40-year-old Matt talking to the 30-year-old Matt would simply say, trust the process. And the process is being trusted. So we'll see what happens. In 10 years, we'll talk about this again.
Wow, love it. I cannot wait. Oh my God, I'm just so curious, even more curious now. Matt, where can everyone find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they listen to your unbelievable podcast?
Absolutely. So the podcast is on every major podcasting platform, Spotify, Apple, all of them. It's everywhere. All you have to do is type in Decoding Success, DECODING SUCCESS. I am surprised that I spelled that correctly.
Wow.
And you will see it. It will pop up. I think 275-ish episodes at this point. So a lot of content to consume there with some truly incredible individuals. And then if you want to connect on social, I think I'm most active on Instagram, although I've definitely been picking up on Twitter. My handle is the same across both. It's at MATT_LEBRIS. And I answer all my DMs. I answer literally everything. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Matt, and acknowledging your amazing. How do you call it in English? Because I've not used when you say words by their letters.
Spelling.
Spelling. Okay, I've not used this word in a long time since I finished college. Thank you so much. This has
Absolutely.
been what a privilege, Matt. And I wish we could have more hours to just talk to you, to be in your amazing energy, because it's just so inspiring to me. It has been transformational listening to your episodes. I feel that I'm a better human since I see how open and transparent you are and how kind you are, because how you reach out to people and just give your support. This is phenomenal. And let's encourage everyone, my fearless friends, give your support to Matt. And when you listen to at least a snippet of his episodes, you'll see exactly what I mean. Matt, it has been a great honor. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your energy, for your wisdom. And I cannot wait to see what amazing things you are going to create next. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.